Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Cradle News Roundup, your one-stop shop for all news West Asia. My name is Esteban Carrillo. I am the news editor for The Cradle, and as usual, I'm joined by my colleagues, content creator and writer for The Cradle, Karim Shami, and content creator and social media manager for The Cradle, Sima Itayim. Before we get started this week, as usual, please, we want to remind you to leave a like, to share, to subscribe, to find us on our other social media channels, and more importantly, to check out our Patreon, where you can become a supporter of The Cradle. So as we start today, it's been almost 1 week since Israel unilaterally ended the ceasefire in Gaza, dropping heavy airstrikes across the entirety of the Strip, killing at the very least 730 people, nearly half of them children. The death toll continues to climb. As we speak, one of the latest casualties was Al Jazeera correspondent Hossam Shabat in the north of Gaza in Jabalia camp, one of the most important voices coming from inside Gaza. The Israeli occupation army targeted him directly, from what we're hearing. At the same time, sources to Al Arabiya Al Jadid say that ceasefire talks have essentially collapsed in Cairo. Very ill-named ceasefire talks, I would say, because at no point, I think we can all agree in this, that at no point since the start of this ceasefire has this actually been, well, a ceasefire, right? A cessation of hostilities, because Israel has continued to kill people, has continued to drop bombs to fire on innocents, but now it's just a return to the status quo of what was, of what is the U.S.-supported Israeli genocide of Palestinians. In Gaza, we are seeing also complete U.S. support for what's happening, right? Before I let you guys go on, I just want to highlight that the ceasefire in Gaza was started in January before Donald Trump comes into office, right? And now it has collapsed just about 2 months since he came into office. What we're hearing from White House officials is we fully support Israel. We are hearing, the Biden administration was making Israel fight with one hand tied behind their back. Now we have unleashed them to finish the job, etc. So sadly, this has become a bit of a never-ending tale, it seems, and in particular for those trapped inside Gaza with no escape, with no safety, with no food, with no water, with no electricity, with nothing but the hope that the next bomb that drops is not going to be, of them. So having said that, what have you guys heard? What do you guys think about with the latest developments here there in the region?
Thanks, Esteban. I mean, for what you were saying about Trump, the only situation in which Trump would have been able to achieve a lasting deal is if Hamas had decided to unconditionally give up all of the captives in Gaza and with no Palestinian prisoners being released in return, and also accept disarming. So since that is not the case, we see a resumption of this genocidal war, which is also part of implementing the American-Israeli vision for the region and Israel's sovereignty over all of Palestine. So we just got the news of Hossam, the Al Jazeera correspondent. I mean, I'm still in shock. But yeah, so as you said, after last week's episode, it resumed, and they placed the blame on Hamas for not accepting Witkoff's proposal, which was supposedly bridging phase 1 and phase 2. And we don't know what it actually meant. I talked about this in the last episode, what that meant and what was the latest with the deal. So yeah, nearly 1,000 Palestinians murdered, and they're back to, in 1 week, they have deliberately targeted 2 hospitals. One of them they fully detonated, blew up. It's the Turkish Palestinian Friendship Hospital, which is the only specialized hospital for cancer in the Gaza Strip. And then yesterday, they directly bombed a Nasser medical complex in Khan Yunis, and a fire broke out. I think it was the second floor of the emergency building, and the Ministry of Health said that was like the surgical department of that section. So this is fully an American-Israeli war on Gaza. And the deputy U.S. Special Envoy Morgan Ortagus, the famous Morgan Ortagus, who shook hands with the Lebanese president wearing the Star of David ring, said that that the U.S. has unleashed Israel and provided it with all the weapons it needs to continue. Israel has reinvaded Rafah, or as they call it, expanded ground operations. And this has coincided with unbelievably heavy bombardment and besiegement. Palestinians have nowhere to go. They are, in every sense of the word, trapped,
And
beyond comprehension.
let me just jump in. The resumption of the ground invasion as well, right? Because Israeli troops have gone in and retaken that Sarin corridor where the infamous line of corpses resides.
For sure. For sure. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Expanding to Rafah after having retaken the Netzarim corridor, which they had previously withdrawn from. So, yesterday, the civil defense warned of a danger threatening the lives of over 50,000 citizens west of Rafah, where they were being besieged and shot at by the Israeli occupation forces. This was, I mean, we don't know how many people lost their lives here. And they claimed, they issued evacuation orders, but then they opened fire at civilians who were fleeing after they issued those evacuation orders. And the Rafah municipality announced that thousands of families had been forced to flee Tal el Sultan neighborhood under intense bombardment, and crews along with residents were trapped in the area for hours. And these attacks are happening not only in Rafah or in the south or in Khan Yunis, but of course north, central, and south. We have two members of Hamas's political bureau who were assassinated. One of them, Saleh al-Bardawil, along with his wife, in his tent, killed during night prayers. And a bunch of other officials. They are not sparing anyone. Similar to Lebanon, they are not really sparing anyone at this point. And there is the overall understanding that Israel kind of took advantage of the time of the ceasefire to gather all this intel to be able to go after all of these Hamas officials and leaders that they had not previously gone after. So the situation in Gaza is really unthinkable. And meanwhile, Israel has approved the formation of an oversight body or an agency that will oversee the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. Yesterday, the Security Cabinet gave a green light to this plan by Israel Katz, the defense minister, to establish this new directorate under the defense ministry, which is tasked with enabling the voluntary departure of Palestinians from Gaza to third countries. So they are very serious about this, as much as some of us believe that they're not going to be successful with this. So, according to the statement by the defense minister's office, the agency will coordinate safe and controlled passage, managing movement routes, pedestrian checks at Gaza crossings, and infrastructure for land, sea, and air transfers. And Katz openly linked this plan to Donald Trump's so-called peace vision, saying, "We are working to implement the US president's vision, and we will allow any Gaza resident who wants to move to a third state to do so." But of course, rights groups are saying that this is not voluntary, and it does amount to forced displacement and violates international law. And the reality on the ground is clear. This is not about migration. It's about removing Palestinians from their land under the guise of choice.
Mhm.
So, I mean, there's a lot to be said about Gaza, but I mean, I'll leave it there for now because there's so much happening. And it's just really getting exponentially worse. You
Yes.
have the wounded are dying, because they have
Yes.
no access to any kind of care. And it's just beyond comprehension at this point.
The remaining healthcare professionals in Gaza have warned that anybody who has a serious injury is going to die. There is absolutely no way of treating them. Is a very stark reality of the situation inside there. I wanna point out also because the ceasefire talks were going over the weekend, and Jordan had a proposal to exile 3,000 members of Hamas out of Gaza. They don't actually say where, but this is one of the proposals. The Egyptian proposal also was about the release of a number of U.S.-Israeli captives, the cessation of hostilities for a few weeks. Again, very, very vague. Because at the end of the day, how can you trust the Israeli government anymore to stand by any pledge that it makes? There's an obvious, and there has been, let's be honest, there has been since October the 7th, since before, but let's say since October the 7th, 2023, there has been a very direct approach to Gaza. And that is kill them all, right? The children of Amalek, remember what they did to you. We were fighting human animals. There's not going to be any aid entering Gaza, etc. This is simply the continuation of that same plan. I don't understand, when you see some people almost in shock that this has happened again. Where were you for the past year and a half? Where were you for the past several decades in any case?
Before we move into just like a brief picture of what's happening internally in Israeli politics, I also wanted to add that in the occupied West Bank, Israeli Security Cabinet also approved a proposal by, of course, the extremist Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister, to separate 13 illegal settlements from their neighboring settlements and classify them as independent settlements. So this was approved, and he praised this formal recognition of these 13 new settlements in the occupied West Bank, and of course called it a major step towards normalization and effective sovereignty over the area, which is again what we're seeing here, a move to apply sovereignty over the entire the entirety of Palestine. So for context, these areas that have now been granted independence were previously neighborhoods of existing settlements, but now gained administrative independence. And this comes in the context also of the approval of tens of thousands of housing units in the West Bank, or what Israel calls Judea and Samaria. So anyway, Netanyahu's cabinet recently has approved a no confidence motion against the Attorney General, Israeli Attorney General Gali Baharav Miara, who is Israel's chief legal advisor. Just to explain, this happened yesterday, and this comes as Israel's latest move on officials who are considered hostile to the government, defying protesters who have been taking to the streets for around 5-6 days now, actually. So yesterday, this no confidence motion against the Attorney General was approved, and this comes after, of course, the attempt to remove the Shin Bet chief Ronan Bar, who the Attorney General was also, against removing. And so this was passed unanimously by ministers, although neither Netanyahu nor the Attorney General were present. And so now a special committee has to review the case, and I think legal hurdles are expected. But so basically, the government accused Baharav Miara of consistently blocking government policies and labeling her actions as politically motivated. And the justice minister claimed that, there's no longer trust between the government and its top legal advisor. And keep in mind, she's also been pushing for things like a proper October 7 investigation and things like that. So she didn't really stay silent. She warned that the government is trying to place itself above the law and vowed not to allow it. I mean, that's something we already know, that it sees itself as above the law and wants to bring this new Israel project into full effect. So mass protests erupted. These protests are the biggest we've seen since the judicial overhaul protests
Prior to
before
October
October
7th.
7th. Right. In Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, for the sixth straight day, thousands and tens of thousands gathered, even outside the cabinet meeting as the vote happened. And I mean, this comes after also, like I said, trying to remove Ronan Bar, because Ronan Bar is also, posing a nuisance to Netanyahu in several ways. One of them being that his agency is investigating the so-called Qatargate scandal, which involves the financial links between Qatar and Netanyahu aides. Anyway, so this isn't about political disagreements. It's about undermining institutional checks in Israel. So, of course, the Israelis who believe that Israel is a democracy believe that this is a threat to Israeli democracy. And he's trying to oust these top officials because they get in the way of his vision for his project, for what Israel is and what Israel is headed towards.
I mean,
So
yes, let's be
yeah,
honest. His vision is, his own impunity, right? Because I do
yeah,
not think there's a lot of interest from the Netanyahu family to protect the Israeli, so-called democracy, the only democracy in the Middle East. No, it's about
no,
saving his ass. It's about saving his ass since the judicial overhaul, since his election, right? Since
yeah,
he runs for office to be elected essentially to skirt corruption charges to get some immunity, and it's just a continuation, right? And it's very interesting that
yeah.
Israeli democracy is so threatened by
No, yeah, for sure.
by
Because
these attacks. Yeah, go
the
ahead.
judiciary is at a turning point, because this is not like political turmoil only. It's like this is like Netanyahu, and not just Netanyahu, but his camp. This is a targeted dismantling of the judicial system. So because these religious and ultra-nationalist groups, they view the courts as an obstacle to enforcing their religious law, right? So by replacing the attorney general or whoever with someone who's loyal to their cause, then they're just trying to reshape the state from within. And Israel's judicial system has been about like a balancing act, like how to maintain the appearance of a democratic state, even though it's not, and to shield Israel from international backlash. And this has kind of collapsed now. This has shattered. And so these protests are serious because they are like about the actual governance of Israel, not about like price hikes or whatever, like we saw in the past. And historically, whenever Israeli society was divided, killing Palestinians would unite them. But now, even killing and displacing Palestinians and demolishing their homes doesn't serve as a unifying factor anymore. So there's no like rallying effect that we used to see in full, gear. Like it's not working as well as it used to, you know. And this to go back to, before we move on, everything we've just been talking about. This is like now we have these protests and then the genocide on the sidelines. So this is like a normalization of violence against Palestinians, after 2 years of this carnage in the Gaza and the West Bank. Suffering has become background noise. And again, killing them doesn't unite the Israelis anymore. it's kind of falling apart at the seams in a way. Like, I don't know, this is the extreme. I don't know how much further it can go. This is really like the peak. So, they don't fear Arab or international consequences. They can do whatever they want. And now they have these domestic crises unfolding. And really, the genocide and what's happening in the West Bank and everywhere else in the region is just background noise. And, he's doing all these little things as distractions from the domestic crises. And also,
Yes.
that takes a number of different forms. So that's like where we are really with this.
It's very interesting what you said, right? That about the consequences, because maybe there was a fear at some point in the Israeli democratic systems about some sort of consequence, but we know now that is not simply the case. Arab nations are just standing by and watching, except for one, which is Yemen, which maybe we can get into a bit later. But when you have the protection that you do as the state of Israel, Yemen doesn't really doesn't pose that much of a threat. Maybe many of our listeners will be completely in disagreement with me, but you have the entire NATO apparatus, you have the entire Western militaries and intelligence services working for you. A nation, despite the bravery, despite the capacities that Yemen has demonstrated, I don't think, right, it's going to create much of an impact to change these things that we're seeing. I think the change is going to come internally, as you're saying, Sima, because this degradation has been happening for a while now, right? The fall of Israeli democracy. We have been reading about it in Israeli media for a long time, even before October 7, and everything just kind of became more compounded since then, as you say, right? Like they become united to do a genocide, but then at some point their own differences start to show up. What I wanted to ask you guys was, like I said, it's been 2 months since Trump came to power. Imagine that. It's been only 2 months. It's incredible to think everything that's happened since then. Benjamin Netanyahu, I read this very interesting article a few days ago on responsible statecraft, in which the author was essentially arguing that what Netanyahu is doing is portraying strength, right? Portraying himself to be a strong man within Israeli the system of power, right? The system of governance, by trying to dismiss the Shin Bet chief, by trying to dismiss the AG, by consolidating power around himself, etc. By sending planes to bomb Gaza indiscriminately, in an attempt to not be seen as a loser, right? To not get a Zelensky treatment from Donald Trump. I do not know if I agree entirely, because my view has always been that there's no wrong that Israel can do that the United States would not support, because history has shown us this. But Trump is, if nothing else, I think a disruptor, right? Maybe we will not agree with many things that the man stands for, but he is kind of marches to the beat of his own drum in many things. Do you guys think there's any possibility that, again, only 2 months in office, he still has 4 years to go, is this going to be the story of the next 4 years? Is this going to be, he has already sent $16 billion to Israel. Just Donald Trump has already sent $16 billion in 2 months. Is this going to be continued, right? Is this going to be the standard, $16 billion every 2 months? Is it going to be, more troops? He's deploying more troops now, more ships to the Red Sea to confront Yemen. Is there going to be any stop to this, right? Because for a while we saw Steve Witkoff and the other guy, Adam Bowler, talking directly to Hamas, being very pressuring, right, the Israelis into the ceasefire. But now all of that seems to have disintegrated, and everybody has come right behind Netanyahu and said, we will back you to do whatever the hell you want. But again, is that going to be the story of the next 4 years? Or are we maybe going to see a point in which all of this is going to shift and Benjamin Netanyahu is simply going to run out of cards? What do you guys think?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think, of course, regarding this issue, there's two major opinions. No, either that two guys, Trump and Trump and Netanyahu, they will like fight each other because they are both have like big ego, and they might collide with each other. And there's another opinion that says that. As we know, the United States will do whatever Israel needs to do. I lean to the second opinion. The first opinion is more like Charmin. I lean to the second opinion. Both might be true also, because till now Trump is doing whatever Israel wants, and I think the Americans even offer Israel, we can help you on this. Do you want us to do it? That's how I see the things. But also, يعني you said been in office to يعني 2 3 months and he did all this. يعني Trump is not as I'm not talking as the like people who like Biden and who like Hillary Clinton are talking, but it's true that the guy is not stable, and the guy is taking like some decisions that takes countries years to take or to rally upon. He's just signing it. So I don't know. Today he might like love Netanyahu, and maybe something will happen like a voice note that somebody will publish. He might make him angry, but that doesn't mean that the United States or Trump will not continue aiding Israel. It means he might hate Netanyahu as a person, and they might find new solutions. But till now, that's what we are seeing. Yani Biden made some coalitions. He targeted some points in Yemen. Okay, they did some damages, but they didn't kill a lot of civilians. At least Trump, the first strike he did since he took office, he killed more civilians than Biden did in the recent 1.5 years. Yani he's like more cruel. Yeah, he wants this. Yani he wants to show that Americans are tough and that America is number one. And one of his tools is to kill civilians in the Middle East. It's so obvious. If you don't see this, go read the news, go read the Cradle. Yani, it's so obvious. That's what's happening now. What will happen in the next 24 hours in the next year? We don't know. We have Netanyahu and Trump, and both are like you can't expect anything from them. And you can't like say, okay, Netanyahu will do this or Trump will do this. يعني we have to wait and see. And unfortunately, there's no other players. Maybe people can predict things if you have more than one player. But currently, you have one player and they are doing whatever they want. Yeah, nobody is stopping him. Is stopping them. يعني Russia has nothing to do with this. China has nothing to do with this. Saudi Arabia has nothing to do with this. It's very clear for the blind that Jordan and Egypt, Sisi, they are happy of what is happening. Currently, we have a proxy government in Lebanon. Yani we have a new Sisi in Lebanon and we have a new King Abdullah in Lebanon. Now these are both ruling Lebanon. Yani our president and our prime minister are very similar to the rulers of Egypt and Jordan. They don't care about what's happening in Lebanon. They care that the Americans are smiling at the end of the day in their faces. So it's very difficult for us to know. And we have Syria. Syria, now we saw what's happening in Turkey. We will talk more about Turkey, of course. But if Turkey or if Erdogan hand is hurting, then the whole Syria is being hurt. So, and we have the only players in the region now, Trump and Netanyahu. We have to wait and see.
What do you think, Sima?
Yeah, I think it's I can't know if for Trump's entire turn he's going to burn down West Asia, like, but it seems like he's willing to burn down West Asia. I don't see that again. I don't see that Trump would stop unless you see total submission on our side. Now, of course, some people would argue, even Karim, one of them, that for example, Lebanon by signing the ceasefire, that is submission. I agree with him, but I mean like 100% submission, like from everyone, from Gaza, from Yemen. So why would Trump stop if he doesn't have total submission from all the players in West Asia? I don't see why he would stop because that's you need to and until everyone's just subdued really and tamed so that Israel feels better about itself and Israel can carry out its again, like if this Jewish state that wants to expand, not only expand its borders but expand its settlement, it has illegal occupation as one of its national values. I mean, I don't know. I don't see him calming down until we calm down and say, okay, fine, we give up
We
and
roll
we
over.
surrender.
Yeah, we roll over.
Yeah.
Because, just to get into Yemen a bit, because I don't want us to go too long into it. But Yemen has become the target of the U.S. War, of these very intense attacks that have been happening. We talked about it last week. again, we know this is not going to resolve at the end of a gun, but there's also Iraq, right? Like Iraq is also been starting to get pressure to dismantle the PMU and all of these factions from Israel. But as Karim often puts it, right, Iraq is just going to do whatever is told. And then at the end of the list is Iran, right? With the letter from Trump to Khamenei and the threats that are continuing. We heard a few months ago that Israel was planning to launch attacks on Iran with the U.S. help in 6 months, right? They said by the fall, right? So again, none of us here have a crystal ball, sadly, but the way things are going, it does seem like this has kind of become the status quo, right? And I think one of the places that you can see it clearest is in Lebanon, where again the Israeli occupation army has continued to launch attacks, killing several people just over this weekend in the south, in the east of Lebanon, threatening to expand attacks on Beirut again. Obviously threatening the airport, obviously threatening the usual things that they do, civilians, and the United States standing right behind them, saying, we are willing to give you a freedom of action. At the same time, talking with the Lebanese leaders who are scrambling to put a stop to this in any way. But I feel like in Gaza, like in the West Bank, you as an Arab can do what you want to protect your people. But at the end of the day, if the most powerful empire in history is standing behind this genocidal, suicidal nation that is on a warpath, I don't think there's much that you can do, right? And I feel very concerned about what may come next for Lebanon, because now we're hearing, over the weekend there was a rocket attack that was launched from Lebanese soil into a Metula settlement in Israel, and this was used to expand the air campaign. And then we were hearing some reports say that Israel may be trying to essentially do a false flag, right, to justify again dropping bombs in Beirut and just expanding their aggression. Because at the end of the day, they want us to roll over. They want everyone to roll over to tap out and just to say, okay, we will normalize with you. But at what cost, right? And who is willing to do it? What do you guys think about what's happening in Lebanon, about this escalation? Because it's been coming from Syria as well, not just from Israel.
Karim, before I let you go, I mean, it's a one-sided war. Lebanon's under constant attack. We saw attacks yesterday in the south that killed, a citizen. And by the way, guys, just pointing it out there, if someone is in Hezbollah but is not in combat, then it is a civilian. So I just wanted to make that clear to
These are
anybody
the
who
rules
was,
of war, right? These are the
yes,
rules
to
of war.
anyone who was confused about that. So, your stuff doesn't fly with me. Anyway, so we had like very, very, very brutal strikes. They started before this thing happened, where on Saturday, 5 primitive rockets were launched at the Israeli settlement of Mtalle or Metula. And in response, Israel unleashed a heavy wave of airstrikes, like very heavy, on both southern and eastern Lebanon. And Hezbollah, which typically claims responsibility for its operations, denied involvement in this rocket fire. I mean, if you see the photo of the rocket launches, you'll know it's not Hezbollah. I mean, I think it's just agents working for Israel trying to give them excuse, but they don't need an excuse. Again, they don't need an excuse. So not so sure. Israel claimed to have targeted, of course, Hezbollah infrastructure, including command centers and rocket sites. And the death toll is at least 8 people. And of course, they're saying they're doing this to protect their civilians. And of course, the Lebanese state has remained completely silent. No condemnation.
Really?
Yeah, no statements. Oh, you're being sarcastic.
Breaking
No,
news.
just silence. Silence, for the South, it's like, of course, once again, all these decades later, nothing has changed. The South is treated as though it's not a part of Lebanon. It's totally neglected. And to make matters worse, since the truce was signed in November, Israel's reported has violated the ceasefire not 1,000 times, not 1,500 times, but thousands of times. And of course, continues to occupy these new 5 strict positions. And Hezbollah has intentionally taken a step back. Hezbollah is not in a great place, is it? Heavily targeted, not given a moment to breathe. Even its newer leaders that have been recently appointed are being targeted one by one. Anyway, Hezbollah has given the Lebanese government and army space to act, standing behind the army and allowing the state a chance to rise to the occasion. But let's be honest, that's leading nowhere. So we are under a one-sided war. And again, it's like, oh, thank you to the government for working to make sure that Beirut won't be hit, because the south isn't a part of Lebanon. We should only worry if Beirut is hit, right? And anyway, this is Lebanon without the resistance, It's a Lebanon that plays into Israel's hands and that seeks complete inaction over justice at any price, and of course bends to external pressure. Can't even muster up a statement to condemn strikes on its own land. And internally, you have Lebanese saying that Hezbollah lost its legitimacy, right, as a national resistance movement because it opened the front of support for Gaza. Which is that's for another time. I'm not going to get into that now. But so, I mean, that's what I wanted to add about Lebanon. Karim, what do you think about this internal sentiment, this normalization where Lebanon's going?
You didn't leave me anything to talk about. Oh, there's only one thing to talk about, maybe for our viewers. And many even people will disagree with me, but currently in Lebanon and previously, and before even the assassination of Sayyid Hassan, Lebanon is either black or white. There is no gray part. You are either with Israel or against Israel. That's it. Previously, the majority or the power that Hezbollah possessed prevented the government to take some decisions such as normalizing, and that's it. And they didn't use their power internally at all. They didn't push any narrative inside Lebanon. And I think this is the biggest mistake that they did. Currently, the power has shifted, but the people are still the same. And the people that believe in retaliation and resistance are the same percentage as before the assassination of Sayyid Hassan. But what happened now is that the power inside the government shifted, and now the people that are against Hezbollah are acting as if they were the people who fight at Hezbollah, and they are taking decisions against Hezbollah as if they are the ones who won. Just to let you know how much the Israelis they are. They are not even Zionist. Zionist is like a very beautiful word for them. They are Israelis. There's no difference. But the difference is that they know difference from Hezbollah, that they know how to win. I think they will push for everything, and even the Israelis will tell them خلاص stop, as what happened last month. If you know Arabic and you're following the Lebanese journalists that are aligned with Israel and Saudi Arabia, you will see that they were pushing for normalizations in the media with Israel, and they are preparing the masses. They are saying, if not this week, next week. And now, when you go to the streets in Lebanon, you will see, I think the normalization is before the summer. Next, the new school year, you will have normalization. And the funny part is that the Israelis went out and said, no, we don't want normalization now, because we have parts of your country. We don't want to make a new borders with Lebanon. We are happy as we are.
Yes.
And after that, the journalists and the people that go to the TVs, they stop talking about normalization, because Israel told them, no, that's not now, babies.
That's not what we want.
Talk about something else. So, in short, there's either black or white in Lebanon. You're either with or against Israel. If you're with Israel, currently you are pushing the narrative of the United States and the Israelis and the Saudi Arabians that everything is blamed on Hezbollah. And unfortunately, Hezbollah, they don't know how to win. When they had the majority in the parliament, they didn't establish anything internally. They didn't push any agenda. They didn't even change a word in the history book. And currently, the people that are controlling Lebanon country on behalf of the United States and the Israelis, they know how to win, and they are changing everything. Yani, even in the media, you see commercials of the Lebanese new government, their establishments. You see that currently there's no Hezbollah. We have to move forward, or this is Lebanon. So they know how to win, and unfortunately, Hezbollah didn't know how to win. And in Arabic, we have a saying, which is, if you are very powerful, your one mistake is multiplied by 1,000. And the mistake that Hezbollah did is so huge, and we are living the consequences of it.
Indeed, Lebanon really is, between a rock and a hard place. It's a
By
country
the way,
that
there's a drone. There's a drone now. It came back. It's hovering above Beirut. It's really loud.
That's been the status
For
quo.
the Lebanese army?
No. It's an Israeli drone.
We saw the Lebanese Air Force a few days ago when they bombed Syria with their World War II planes. Sadly, that is, again, the status quo that nations need to heal. Nations need to be bowed, against the occupier, against the genociders, right?
By the way, guys, this is Hussam. He was only 22 years old. You know him. This is the Al Jazeera correspondent Hussam Shabat. So yeah, he was born in 2001. He's the second journalist they killed today, like within a span of less than 3 hours.
It's been
So
200,
again,
208 journalists killed.
yeah,
208
208, maybe
journalists.
209 now even. Or
We saw it was one of the NGOs that track attacks against journalists that said a few months ago that the biggest cause of death for journalists in war zones for the past year and a half has been the Israeli army. So again, this is kind of what has become normal, right? And just to finish my thought about what I want to say about Lebanon is that Lebanon needs billions to reconstruct for the damage that it has already incurred by the attacks, by the Israeli attacks, by the US-backed war. This is money that is being offered, right, by the IMF, by the World Bank, by the Saudis, by the Qataris, etc., by the US, I guess. And everything's conditioned. Everything's conditioned, and more likely than not, conditioned on normalization. And as you guys said, or like more likely, as Ghassan Kanafani said, right, like the neck does not negotiate against the sword. And sadly, that is exactly the position that Lebanon finds itself in. But we will continue to discuss this as the weeks go on. I want us to move to Turkey, a nation we don't often discuss on its own, but that has warranted discussion over recent days because a huge protest broke out across Turkey, several cities, following the arrest of Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu. Over 1,100 people arrested as of this recording, including 9 journalists. İmamoğlu, a prominent figure in Turkish politics and Recep Tayyip Erdogan's main rival, who could be considered, possibly the next president of Turkey in the upcoming elections. Upcoming elections in 2028, by the way. So Erdogan really acting way ahead of time to jail his competitors. Turkey at this point finds itself in a very interesting position following the fall of Syria, right? And they seem to have consolidated a lot of power, a lot of importance, in particular, as NATO members. They are in a way the keepers of Syria, no, of the ISIS government that is currently governing there. And also, an interesting report that I want to mention is that last week the EU. A report comes out last week saying that the EU is apparently reconsidering allowing Turkey into the Union, right? To allow Turkey to become a full EU member. Why? Because they need a new arms dealer. They need to start buying weapons from someone else, because now we know that Europe is on a desperate rush to start arming themselves for their, inevitable war with Russia, now that the United States has essentially left them, standing out in the cold on their own. So all of a sudden, being friendly with Turkey seems to be the correct move for them. So, I just want to give that context to why, right, we are seeing essentially the breakdown of any, democratic pretenses that may have existed in the former Ottoman Empire, to now become more of a, only Erdogan can be in power, only Erdogan can protect our interests, only Erdogan can move forward. So what have you guys heard? What have you guys seen about what's been happening in Turkey?
First, to be honest, I'm not that professional in Turkey issues, internal issues, but of course we all saw what happened. We saw that the mayor of Istanbul was detained, and yesterday he was jailed. They jailed him 100%.
Officially, yes.
Yeah, officially jailed. And we know that the mayor in Istanbul, he was elected by the people of Istanbul. And this is a big difference. In our region, or in Lebanon, for instance, usually mayors are appointed. But he was elected. That means that the people elected him and they love him for the city. That's why we saw many people went to the streets. But the background story, I read many things. And some people say that because he was... he had his education in Cyprus and it was revoked, and with him like 106 people were also their education was revoked. But the point is that, as you said, it's of course it's political. If he was from his party, this won't happen, and we all know this.
If he was from the AKP, right? That's Erdogan's party.
So, and the point is that I don't know his ideology. يعني maybe both him and Erdogan is good for the country or bad for the Turkey. But we discuss here what's good and bad for the region. I don't know the stance of the mayor
Istanbul.
of Istanbul.
Imamoglu. Mhm.
Do you know about him? Do you know? Yani he's good with Iran. He's good with the United States. He's good with Israel. Yeah, we have to know this before.
I would imagine he's not, a very pro-resistant
I
character.
don't know, but what's happening here now currently in Turkey, as I see it, as a person who's not like too much into Turkey, this either will make Erdogan the ultimate leader for maybe at least 1 decade or 2 decades to come, or it will weaken him. We have to wait and see. And we know that Turkey now has like foots in many places in Libya. If Erdogan is weakened, because this is Erdogan's policy. I don't think this is the policy of Turkey. We have to differentiate this. And of course, Syria will be weakened if he's weakened, or if he gets the full power, then he can do whatever he wants in Syria, in Qatar, in Libya. We have to wait and see.
Well, like just to give a bit of a rundown in case there's anyone watching who has no idea. So he was, yeah, formally arrested yesterday on corruption charges, but also was previously detained for not only corruption, but terror links, to the PKK. So the
Mhm.
court accuses him of everything from embezzlement to rigging bids to unlawful data collection. And he called this like unimaginable slander. And he put out all these things on social media like, I will never bow down and we will get through this and whatever. So initially, before yesterday, he was like formally arrested yesterday. So he was detained in a dawn raid earlier this week. Just as his party, which is the CHP, began endorsing him as a 2028 presidential candidate. So, the timing, says a lot. And so, as you guys mentioned, his university diploma was revoked the day before his arrest. So this sparked what we can safely call the largest street protest in Turkey in over a decade across the country. And they were defying a 4-day protest ban that the government enforced. They enforced a protest ban. And of course, we saw riot police with tear gas and pepper spray and all that. And you mentioned the mass detentions. But so the point is, many analysts, including those who work with us here at the Cradle, see this as a political purge, of
Mhm.
course, not a legal process. It's an attempt by him to remove his strongest political rival, I guess, ahead
Yes.
of the election, because this guy he's more than a mayor. He's like a national symbol of political
Yes.
hope for
Because
many Turks.
when he's elected for Istanbul mayor, he defeats Erdogan's candidate, right? The CHP defeats the AKP candidate by like 20,000 votes, and some backroom dealing, some backroom maneuvering by the governing party in Turkey, which, by the way, Erdogan has been president for 23 years in Turkey. They rerun the election, right? They do it again. And then the second time, he wins by almost 1 million votes, right? So if anything, this maneuver in this sort of persecution works in his favor. And I would imagine down the line, is probably going to continue to work in his favor after what happened last week. What I want to bring up to attention, right, is the parallels of what happened, what Erdogan has done over the past week with Imamoglu, with what happened with Imran Khan in Pakistan, right? When this very popular prime minister is removed from office in a legislative coup, sent to prison, given dozens of charges on everything, right? Just buried in legal cases. Him and his wife thrown in jail. His party is persecuted. His followers are persecuted. It becomes a war, right? In Turkey, it becomes a war against the PTI, if I'm not mistaken. That's Khan's party. In Turkey, it seems to be the same playbook in a way, and because that's the empire playbook, right? This is what happens. This is what lawfare is. This is how you persecute leaders when you don't want to go into a country with marching, with troops, or you don't have an ISIS, or you don't have, you don't want to launch airstrikes and start killing people. You use lawfare. That's what happened in Brazil. That's what happened in Ecuador. That's what happened in Argentina. That's what happened in Pakistan. That's what happens, everywhere. It's been happening everywhere for many, many years, and it's just, I think, again, this idea that Erdogan is their guy, right? He's the guy. He's the guy who brought down Assad. He's the guy who's who's friendly with Israel, who's friendly with Azerbaijan. He's the one that is wanting to kind of combat Iranian influence, right? He wants Turkish influence in West Asia, to overtake whatever is left of Iranian influence. And here's actually what's interesting and what I want to hear your guys' thought about it, because Walla News, this Israeli news outlet, a few days ago comes out with this incredibly interesting report that says that Israeli officials are talking about a confrontation between Turkey and Israel in Syria being inevitable, and that there's preparations going, right, to essentially be a war between Israel and Turkey. Which, by the way, Israel and Turkey, they're allies. They've been allied for the longest time. Erdogan and Netanyahu, two peas in a pod. Erdogan will give the loudest speeches about Netanyahu being a Nazi and a Hitler and whatever else, but then there's actual no attempts to break relations, to cut the gas that flows through Turkish pipelines to Israel, to end trade. Remember when he poses the trade ban, and then immediately a few days later starts giving waivers for companies to continue doing trade with Israel. And we have reports at the Cradle about how the trade has essentially not slowed down. If anything, it has increased since the start of the genocide in Gaza. So do you guys think there's any validity, right? Because let's just remember that Israel has been essentially one of the only countries in the world that has been referring to the Syrian government, the current de facto government in Syria, as an Al-Qaeda government, as a terrorist government. And they say it too, that they are supported by Turkey, which is, yes, factual, it is. They're completely supported by Turkey. They are, propped up by Erdogan. Is Israel going to go to war with Turkey in Syria?
Not war. I mean, there
Balash,
may be a
yes.
Turkish threat,
On
but
social media, they will fight on social media.
100%. Remember yesterday what I posted about the Channel 12 correspondent, that he was saying that this is like just a distraction, basically, like Netanyahu has directed the Israeli media to make it seem like Israel's gearing up for a war with Turkey, and this is to distract from, all the internal crises and to be able to continue maybe, everything else that he's doing. So we have a feature, we'll put it up on the screen, by Mohammed Hassan Swaydan from a few days ago, called "The Battle Between Greater Israel and Neo-Ottomanism in Syria." So it gives a perspective on the kind of clashing interests between Israel and Turkey in Syria. But I mean, even through this analysis, a war does not seem likely at all. Karim, go ahead.
Yeah, just maybe people will not understand how is that. How they are talking like this, and there's like institutions who are saying that it's the war is coming between the two. If you read Egyptian or Jordanian newspapers, you will think that the king of Jordan tomorrow will go and like behead Netanyahu, and that Al Sisi will go and like drown the whole Israeli population.
I hope you
But in
replace
fact,
the picture of King Abdullah with the gun, right? When he's
yeah, yeah.
cosplaying.
Yeah. So that's it. The media and what these politicians talk is very different of what's happening on the ground. Uh, Not only Sisi. Before Sisi, we had Morsi, and before Morsi, we had Hosni Mubarak. Especially during Hosni Mubarak, there was, I think, 4 wars between. Or not wars, we can say 4 aggressions from Israel on Gaza. And in the 4 wars, Hosni Mubarak refused to open the borders or to accept even people to like get medical care in Egypt. And the Sisi, it's the same. Hala, Sisi is more smart, I think, because Sisi blamed Israel. He said, "Oh look, we wanted to take them, but Israel didn't open the border." Although everybody knows that Egypt has the authority over Gaza. It's like signed. There's a signed agreement that they have the authority. They can take people in and like open the border, but he didn't. So it's the same.
I just one idea about Israel and Turkey that like maybe this will put things into perspective is, Israel, when there is an existential threat to Israel, Israel will set out to destroy its enemies. In the case of Turkey, there will be no war because there is no existential threat from Turkey. There's competition, and there is like, they might be jeopardizing the current is what Israel wants its regional dominance to look like, because Israel wants total dominance over the region. So yes, Turkey could be an inconvenience in many ways we could
Yes, yes.
discuss, but not a threat to its existence that this
Yeah,
would lead to a war.
yeah. It's yeah, yeah, exactly. So now there is. يعني we can say there is no Iranian influence in West Asia, and Israel and Turkey humped in to fill out this influence. Erdogan or Turkey took Syria, or most of Syria. Israel took south of Syria and the Lebanese government, and also Turkey took the north of Lebanon. You have Tripoli and many parts of Akkar in Lebanon. They are if you make now like a poll, you'll see that most of them they want to join Syria under the or to join Turkey. Uh, and now we have Iraq. I think Iraq, nobody will dare to come near Iraq to fill Iran's post, because Iraq is already fully occupied by the United States. It will be taken by the United States, and they are maybe hoping Ansarullah will go down, and there nobody knows. Maybe they will give like Yemen to Saudi Arabia, because we know that the Gulf countries, they are very stupid. They don't know how to act in these situations. They are the ones who paid the money against Bashar al-Assad for 13 years or 14 years. I think they paid trillions. I think because the Qatari foreign minister said like 10 years ago that they paid 500 million. I think till now they paid almost a trillion. And of course, Saudi Arabia paid like billions and billions of dollars for journalists and people inside Lebanon. And now, after Hezbollah, what happened to Hezbollah? We saw that in the north, Turkey is more powerful. And we saw that Turkey, yeah, 90% of Syria, although they didn't pay as much. So that's how I see it, unfortunately.
So,
Yeah.
to go back to the beginning of this discussion, right? At this point, Israel has reopened three fronts. They have opened the front again in Gaza, the front in Lebanon, and the front in Yemen, right? Even though the front in Yemen is not being fought directly by Israel yet, it's being just fought by the United States. Before we finish for this week, I just want to get your thoughts on like what is next for Yemen? What can Yemen do next that they haven't done already, right? Because they have already, since the expansion of this war, they have been targeting the U.S. warships, the USS Truman. They have declared Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv unsafe for travel. And they say they were going to continue to launch attacks. They've launched, if I'm not mistaken, at least two Palestine 2 missiles, the hypersonic ballistic missiles towards Israel. Both of them, I believe, shot down. But at this point, they're on their own, right? I heard also that one of their missiles, the fire actually fell in Saudi Arabia. So what is next? What is next for Yemen?
As I said last time, Esteban, I think, and people got angry in the comments because I said it, but I think unless they take footage from a drone or whatever, or a footage is leaked that they targeted a US ship, okay, as if nothing is happening in the Red Sea. We only hear the news. And you too. You see that the Yemeni says that we targeted this ship, and then the Americans will have a counter post on Twitter say that they downed the drones or the ships or the cruise missiles. Unless there's visual evidence that this is happening, I think that's it. As if they are doing nothing in the Red Sea. But of course, they are. Some of course of the Israeli shipping companies are in pain because they are really targeting them. But I'm talking about militarily against the Americans. And internally, I think they have to like be patient for like 10 days and launch 10 missiles at once, because one missile will do nothing. Yeah, man, one missile, nothing. Ben Gurion Airport is nothing. Ben Gurion Airport is like a big piece of land. Yani if you target Ben Gurion Airport, they will like put asphalt the next day. You have other choices also, and more than one missile. That's my opinion. And my opinion for the whole resistance. I don't know if YouTube will block this, but I will say it. We have, or they have, to go back to the 70s. What Israel did is not via military power, is via assassinations. Okay, in the 70s there were operations outside the borders, and there were assassinations. Okay, like fighting like this, continuing like this, only the people will suffer. We have to make a breakthrough. I am not a fighter, but also if they want like a free consultancy, I'm ready.
Free? No, man. Nothing good in
Wallah
life is ever
free.
free.
No, but yeah, we don't know the secret behind why Yemen only launches one missile at a time. Like the anti Iran people will say it's because their Iranian masters don't let them launch more than one missile at a time. But I mean, we would like to see at least 4 or 5 launched, so that maybe one could,
Uh,
yeah.
I have absolutely no information. This is completely, what I think it's happening. Is the fact that they are under constant surveillance and under constant
Of
siege,
course.
because
Yeah, I know.
the attacks against Yemen by the U.S. since
They're brutal.
they're brutal and they're nightly. It's like non-stop. It's not like there's been a night in which there hasn't been an attack. No, they're always been hitting them for the past several nights. We'll have to see, right? Because at some point, one of these missiles, one of these drones is going to get through, as we have seen before
Of course.
in the Red
Remember when
Of
Sea.
course.
they killed a guy from Belarus who was like a janitor or something who used to be a sniper in the army, and he was like in his apartment and they killed him with the Yafa drone, and we need more operations like that.
Or as I said also last time, Sima, yani, if you're not doing impact in the Red Sea against the military ships, Yemen should start target Bahrain and other U.S. installations because this has effect. People can see it. The market will crash. The petroleum will rise.
So you're
Yani,
saying
you have
smarter targets, smarter targets.
yeah, because there's an effect. I punch you, I want to hurt you. Okay, if you don't care, if I punch you in secret and tell the people, look, I punched him, he's crying, and people will look at you and you're not crying, people, yeah, there's no effect, and people will not believe you or believe me. You know what I mean?
I agree,
Because
but
I am
aren't
the
you?
weaker one. I am Yaman. I am weak. You're the United States. You're the powerful one. If I tell them I punched him and I did whatever, nobody will believe me.
There's no evidence. Yeah.
2025. We want video evidence.
But
You send a drone. You send a drone with streaming video.
And I think
so
that
what
this
are the
is
repercussions? What are the repercussions of hitting U.S. assets in Arab countries? Or you think nothing worse than what they're doing now?
Nothing.
Everything they've
Zero.
done
Zero precautions.
is
It's
the
the
worst
same.
they could do already.
Sima, it's zero the same.
I think that's interesting. Yeah.
Before what? Yes. Before Yemen used to target bases, and they target a base in Bahrain, U.S. base in Bahrain. I think in 2017, nothing happened. But all the people saw it. The Bahrainis were shivering. The war stopped. Blah blah blah blah blah.
Yeah, nothing.
It's logic. It's
I
logic.
agree.
To be honest, yes, I think it's a very interesting point to say. Like I said, these attacks are happening nightly. The bombings are being described as earthquakes. So if you start hitting smarter targets, right, in Arab nations, inside Israel, in the Red Sea, the repercussions is going to be the same of what you're already facing. Because I highly doubt it. All of a sudden we're going to see, the storming of the beach of Hodeida by like U.S. troops or British troops or whoever the hell, Blackwater Academy, whatever they're called today. It's highly, highly unlikely. And to your point, Karim, about we need footage. I think the biggest victories that Yemen achieved since the start of the genocide in Gaza were, first of all, the taking of the Galaxy Leader, right? This action movie footage of them landing on the ship. Incredible stuff. And the other one was the drone that Sima made reference to, which again also had the footage, the social media video of the drone flying in from the beach in Tel Aviv, completely unopposed. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, because like I think the title of last week's videos was very appropriate. The unfinished wars, because this is really like all of this is just gonna continue. I know some of it is falling out of the news cycle. We haven't even discussed about the persecution that anti-genocide protesters are facing in the U.S., in Europe, in other Western nations, the deportations, etc. We haven't talked about Mahmoud Khalil. So many things happening right now, and they're all the repercussion of what? Of allowing a rogue state to continue committing a genocide under the noses of the entire world, and everybody else is told to just sit down and shut up, right? But well, here at the Cradle, we will never sit down and we will never shut up. We will continue to do this as long as we are able. And please, I want to ask you all to again check out our Patreon, to please support the work that we do here at the Cradle, to share this video, to drop a like, to subscribe to our channel, to find us on X and on Telegram, and to, well, again, to check our Patreon. Thank you so much for joining us this week. My name is Esteban Carrillo. I have been joined by Karim Shami and Sima Itayin.